Hello everyone, today I'm bringing you the delayed Mannequin of the Month for September 2025. The reason for the delay is that at the very start of the month there was Victory Show. Normally it doesn't quite fall directly at the start of September, but it did this year. So I wanted to cover that and make the video and upload that around that time. So I've pushed Mannequin of the Month to mid-month, so that's why we're covering it now. The topic we're going to talk about was chosen in the normal way via a poll over on Patreon, and there are generally 3 options on there, and the one that tops the poll is covered for Mannequin of the Month. And the topic we're covering today is the kit uniform of a soldier in 1 Para, the 1st Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, on emergency deployment to Aden in 1967. And this was due to the need for greater manpower during the Aden emergency, which is a topic I've covered on the channel previously. If you're interested in the Aden emergency, I'll put a card in the video here, but also to describe it here, there's an episode of the documentary series End of Empire, which deals with Aden, which is well worth a watch. So I highly recommend going and having a look at that at some point. The forces most associated with the Aden emergency, in no small part due to the sort of attitude and the personality of its commanding officer, of course the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, but there were various other British Army regiments involved in Aden at the same time, as well, of course, during the emergency. So 1 Para is one example of that, and this is the topic that came at the top of the poll this month, so that's what we're going to cover. We have covered kit worn and the uniform worn in Aden at this time previously, but looking at different regiments, so it'll be a little bit different here. Starting at the top, of course, we have the beret, the maroon, historically described as the red beret, but the maroon beret of British Airborne Forces, and you have the Parachute Regiment cap badge on there, as you can see. So regimental headdress worn as was typical in Aden. The uniform is, of course, adapted for, well, it's a uniform issued for wear in an arid environment and hot weather environment. 1 Para made use of a mix of various different shirts, bush jackets and so forth, but tended to be wearing the green trousers that we have here. What we have specifically on the Mannequin is a khaki 1950 pattern bush jacket worn tucked in as a shirt, and this is made of a cellular material. And then we have drill green trousers, which are, again, part of the 1950 pattern uniform, but it was produced in both khaki and green for use in arid, hot weather environments and jungle environments, basically. So you do see a mix here. You also see the green cellular shirts, which were issued for sort of generally more for jungle use during this period. They were worn as well, and wool shirts in some instances as well. So 1 Para show quite the variation, quite the variety of uniform in that regard. This is just one example, but it makes an interesting contrast between the green and the khaki. I assume this was because it was an emergency deployment. There were limited stocks of kit available, or limited time to issue them out. So I haven't quite got to the bottom of why that is, but certainly 1 Para had quite the variety of uniform worn in Aden at the time. The equipment carried is the 1958 pattern, which was pretty much standard for British infantry at this point. There were still corps troops and so forth using other patterns, but for the infantry, issue of new kit had basically caught up, and infantry were wearing 1958 pattern equipment. And we have here the belt supporting 2 ammunition pouches. We don't have the yoke, of course. This is worn in a stripped down configuration, and we'll see how little there is as we move the Mannequin around. In this case, we do have 2 ammunition pouches. It was common in Aden for 1 to be carried because there was limited need for ammunition, but photographs of 1 Para do show 2 pouches carried quite frequently. And also you see men armed with the GPMG carrying quite large belts of ammunition. So I think, given the ethos of the regiment and so forth, it makes sense that perhaps more ammunition was carried than was typical by the Parachute Regiment in Aden. We do have the 2 ammunition pouches there, as I say. They are both of 1st pattern. We've covered the various issues of 1958 pattern. Pattern's not really the right word to use, perhaps, but there were various issues, and the pouches were simplified and then enlarged over time. The design was changed, but these are both of the initial pattern that was issued, the initial issue of 1958 pattern, with the stiffened side to the lids and so forth, as you can see there. That's basically it for the front of the Mannequin. We'll see more details of the uniform and the equipment as we move this round. And we'll start doing that now. We'll move this round and have a look at the right-hand side. Looking at the right-hand side of the Mannequin here, I'll just mention that this Mannequin has been shaved down to allow me to fit the trousers that we have here, and also some smaller uniforms as well in the collection. And therefore the shoulders have been shaved down a bit as well. Really, this should be up here like this, of course, and it is when I wear it. But to fit smaller uniforms on the Mannequin, I've had to shave it down. It's just a polystyrene torso Mannequin, so the shoulder droops a bit there. But it does show the epaulette of the bush jacket quite nicely. You can see the sleeves are worn rolled up. They were sometimes rolled more neatly than this and sometimes rolled more scruffily than this in Aden. The photographs show various, depending on how much time you had, I guess. But on the mannequin, they don't look particularly smart because there's no arm in the sleeve, but we do have the sleeves rolled up there, which was typical at the time. In terms of the trousers, you can't see one of the more interesting details here, which is the crossover belt by which these are adjusted in. There's a buckle on each side. There's a belt that crosses over itself and you then adjust them in on each side. So an interesting feature of the trousers we unfortunately can't see here. Take my word for it. Other than that, there's not a lot to see here. This side's pretty plain. We'll see more details if we look at the back and the other leg. In terms of the equipment, we have the right-hand ammunition pouch here, and you can see we have the small pocket on the side for the Energa rifle grenade adapter, which was of course dispensed with fairly soon after the equipment was introduced, but continued to be part of the design basically up until the end of production. There's one final set of pouches that doesn't have it. Up to that point, this remained a part of the design, even though the component it was intended to carry had left service by that point. You can see around on the hip here we have the water bottle. At least one water bottle was generally carried in Aden by all men. And we have here the 1944 pattern water bottle in 1944 pattern carrier rather than 1958 pattern. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we move this around and have a look at the back, which we'll do now. Looking at the back of the mannequin here, you can see the construction of the bush jacket, or some further details of the construction of the bush jacket. Obviously it's tucked in, so we can't really see anything down here. But across the shoulders here, you can see the seam running across there. We've got pleats let in here, as you can see, just to draw that in a bit over the back. There is an integral waist belt, but that's hidden because this is tucked in. Looking at the trousers, we can see some further details of the uniform there. There are two rear pockets, which you can see with the pointed pocket flaps here on the rear of each hip. And then, as mentioned previously, we have the 1944 pattern water bottle here in the 1944 pattern carrier. The carrier, of course, is styled after USM 1910 practice. It would have had hanger hooks at the top here originally. They've been removed to make this a bit more comfortable to carry on the belt loop. There was always an integral belt loop as part of the design, but you had the option of using hanger hooks as well. As I say, those have been removed. They aren't much use with the 1958 pattern when this is carried on the 1958 pattern belt. These, the 1944 pattern as a set, had been issued to the parachute regiment prior to the introduction of 1958 pattern, whereas the rest of the army was basically using 1937 pattern by and large. Apart from specific theatre issue, 1944 pattern was extensively used by the parachute regiment, and many men carried across the bottle and the carrier when 1958 pattern was issued. Of course, originally there was no bottle and carrier with 1958 pattern. That's another story. The parachute regiment certainly made extensive use of the 44 pattern bottle and carrier as we have here. It's very common to see in Aden. Most men from other units had the 1958 pattern bottle in the pouch designed for that purpose. And some men in one para had the 1958 pattern bottle and pouch as well, but many did have what we see here on the mannequin, the 1944 pattern. Just a detail to note here, this is a later issue 1944 pattern bottle, which has the rubber cap, which is something that's been discussed on the channel previously with a detailed look at this carrier and bottle combination. That's basically it for the back of the mannequin. We'll move this around now and have a look at the left-hand side. Looking at the left-hand side of the mannequin here, there's nothing more to say about the bush jacket, but I will mention a detail of the trousers here, which is the map pocket round on the side of the leg. You can see that here with a pointed pocket flap. That's just sewn onto the side of the leg there. And then in terms of the equipment, we can see the side of the left-hand ammunition pouch here has loops for a bayonet. Bayonets were carried in some instances in Aden, but not in this case. It's not universal in photographs at the time, so I've decided to omit the bayonet there. Of course, it would be the bayonet for the self-loading rifle if one were carried. And then we have a first field dressing taped onto the belt here with black electrical tape, as you can see. Very common to see in Aden amongst all units serving there on security duties during the Aden emergency. And of course later in Northern Ireland as well, it was quite common to see around that late 1960s, 1970s period. This is a Second War first field dressing. Shell dressings are also seen in certain instances as well. Basically wartime stocks that were being used up, and it's very common to see them taped onto the equipment like this, where they're easy to access for immediate use if required. So that's basically it. Looking at the left-hand side here, and basically it for this review of the kit on the mannequin. So I do hope you found it interesting looking at this. It's been good putting this together. I certainly find the Aden emergency very interesting, and the events leading up to it as well in Aden in the 1950s and 1960s. And that's covered in the documentary I mentioned earlier in the video, the End of Empire episode, so do go and have a look at that. I do hope you found it interesting looking at the kit and so forth here. If you found this interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked in the description. And if you want to vote each month on what's going to be covered in Mannequin of the Month, as mentioned earlier, the poll, the corporal tier over on Patreon get to vote in the poll each month. There are generally 3 options, and whatever comes to the top of the poll is covered as Mannequin of the Month. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can do that too. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below, and there will be photographs of this posted up over there as well, of course. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.